Licensing Act 2003 Subcommittee of the London Borough of Newham for a licence review for the Hibiscus Caribbean Elderly Association. Please note that the meeting recording will be available on the council's YouTube channel. In accordance with the Members' Code of Conduct, the 3 councillors on the committee today are required to declare any interest on any matter being considered at this meeting. I have no interest to declare. Councillor McWanna?
I don't have anything to declare, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Vaughan?
I just want to let you know that I do know what's your position at the
Mr. Headley is the secretary, councillor.
sorry?
Mr. Headley is the secretary of the trustees.
Yeah, I do know the secretary.
Does this cause any problem?
So that's not interest.
No, thank you. Okay, I'll now move on to introductions. My name is Councillor Tony Wilson. I represent Beckton Ward and I will be chairing this meeting throughout. Councillor McWanna?
Morning, everyone. Councillor Pushpana, and I present Ashford Ward.
Councillor Vaughan?
I'm Councillor Winston Vaughan, representing Forest Gate South Ward.
Thank you. Case officer?
I'm sorry. Colin Hunt, London Borough of Newham, case officer today.
Thank you. Police?
Southern Stuart May, Metropolitan Police Licensing.
Thank you.
Bruce Smith, Counsel for the Metropolitan Police.
PC Case Benj, Licensing Officer for Metropolitan Police.
PC Kerry-Ann Tillid, Licensing Officer for the Met Police.
Thank you.
Steve Jackson, Licensing Team.
Ian McConnell, National Bar.
Could you repeat that?
Commercial noise.
Thank you. Can we have
Potter, GT licensing.
Graham Hopkins, GT licensing.
Liquid Headley, Secretary, HCEA.
I'm Polly Green, I'm Solicitor from Meshcon.
Right, so just for clarity from the very beginning, can please everyone speak up? We've got drills and noises outside and it's very difficult to hear you. So would you like to repeat that again? Please.
So I'm Polly Green, I'm a solicitor from Meshcon.
Thank you. And we have a visitor today.
Sheila Roberts, Assistant Director, Licensing and Regulatory Service.
Thank you. I will now briefly run, no, you're coming down, I haven't forgotten you. I'll now briefly run through the procedure. The licensing case officer will present his report. We then move on to representation from the responsible authorities. For example, the Police Trading Standard, Environmental. And today we have the Council Licensing Authority, the Commercial Environment Team, the Trading Standards Team, and the Met Police. We have no residents today. No?
Yeah, they're all invited. I have had some feedback from residents saying that it's going to be coming due to the time and work and job.
Okay, thank you. So license holder, then we come on to the license holder, then you will have the opportunity to present your case. Finally, members may pass a resolution to deliberate in private and exclude the press and the public, including the parties and the representatives. The clerk and the legal advisor will remain with the members to provide advice on procedure and law. When the decision has been reached, the meeting will reconvene and the decision of the subcommittee will be announced in public. Full written copies of the decision sent to the applicant, stroke licence holder, responsible authorities and interested parties, usually within 5 working days. Parties who have taken part in the hearing may appeal against the decision to the Magistrate Court in 21 days. As this is an administrative hearing under the 2003 Act, we are not trained lawyers, so we rely on legal advice from our legal department, today represented by...
We were licensing solicitor.
Thank you. I would also like to inform all parties that we base our decision on written and oral submissions. The clerk will take minutes of the meeting. Would you like to introduce yourself, ladies?
Baronessa Hussain, Democratic Services.
Thank you. Thank you. If anyone in the chamber wishes to ask a question during the meeting, I ask them to raise their hand and wait to be invited to speak. And I would also like to ask all members and authorities and representations turn off their mobile phones or put it on silence, please. Thank you. Right, would you like to present your report?
Thank you, Chair. Now, the members of the licensing subcommittee are asked to hear and determine an application license, this Community Centre, Buckingham Road, Stratford, London, E15 1SP. The applicant is licensing police and the license holder is Hibiscus Caribbean Elderly Association. The licensing police team have submitted a review of the premises license on the grounds of crime, disorder, protection of children from harm and public safety. A copy of the review application is attached to Appendix A. Additional documents including CCTV, statements from police, statements from residents, dispersal policy, emails, CRIS and CAD reports, and pictures of injuries. These were sent to the licensing authority on the 17th of May 2023 and distributed to the applicant's agents. These are attached to Appendix B and these are restricted. The council licensing authority have made representations supporting the review on the licence and objectives of crime, disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance and the protection of children from harm. A copy of their letter is attached to Appendix C. Council Commercial Environmental Health Team have made representation in support of the review on the licence and objectives of the prevention of public nuisance, and a copy of their letter and supporting documents are attached to Appendix D. The Council Trading Standard Team have made representation in support of on the review on the licence and objectives of protection of children from harm, and a copy of their letter is attached to Appendix E. Local residents have made representation in support of the review. Their letters are attached to Appendix F and they are restricted as well. Local residents have made representation in support of the premises and their letters are attached to Appendix G. Also, they're restricted as well. The premises was issued a premises licence, Licensing Act 2003 in May 2007, with the licence holder being a Miss Lindsay Gilby. The licence was transferred and reissued on the April 12th, in April 2012 in the name of Hibiscus Caribbean Elderly Association, and this is the current licence. The 5th of March 2020, the Council Commercial Environment Health Team reviewed the premises under licence and objective of crime, disorder and public nuisance. The subcommittee sat on the 12th of November 2020. Licence was revoked. The decision letter is attached to Appendix H. The decision of the licensing subcommittee was appealed within the prescribed period, and at the court appeal, the licence was reinstated with conditions. The decision of the appeal at Stratford Magistrates Court on the 27th of May and the 22nd of August 2022 attached to Appendix I. To the existing licence is attached after the review, after the appeal is attached to Appendix J, and a map of the area is attached to Appendix K. Members of the licensing subcommittee are asked to read the application, the representation of the licence holder, and to determine the application. Chair, after this was submitted, there have been some conditions sent to the police. They were sent to me yesterday afternoon. So I haven't had time to distribute it because it was less than 24 hours and I haven't. So I've got the conditions here. There have been some further negotiations between the two parties outside, but these were the conditions that were sent to me yesterday afternoon. So I'm presenting them to you now to see if that you're willing to accept them and everybody's willing to accept it. And obviously you haven't seen them, so you take legal advice, but you may wish to adjourn to look at them. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Paddy, I think we will take that stance. We'll adjourn for 15 minutes.
Yes.
Yes, so we can go through it. So,
Yeah, can I make a point with, along with the police lady? We agreed some further changes with Sergeant Murray.
is anything written down?
No, but we can get that to you, or I could present the changes orally, whichever you prefer.
I would prefer to see them in writing, if that's okay.
Okay.
So would 15 minutes be enough for you to get that written and back to?
Are there significant changes? I've seen them. Are there significant changes to the written version that was presented yesterday?
Not too significant in that if, as in there are a few minor wording points.
We handwrite the amendments, or
Yes, I don't have a paper copy of the,
we've got copies.
yes, we should be able to handwrite them.
It may well help, Chair, then if they could be handwritten before, if you're accepting them in, which I advise that you should.
Thank you.
If we can make the handwritten amendments, and then you can take some time to look at those before we go any further.
Yes. Great.
Do you want them distributed now or shall I distribute? Only going to be one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can get photocopied, I suppose.
Whichever's easiest, but I think we need the version that is the current. version.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you handwrite them and I can go and get copied and distribute them.
Okay, or I do have the electronic company, so I can email that and quickly do it typing if that would be easiest.
Right, so
Turn them off then.
if we adjourn for 15 minutes, if you can get them printed and back to us as quickly as possible, and then we'll reconvene. And thank you.
What have you got? Just do that.
For some
Yeah,
reason.
Rang, we've got, you can go next. You
Right.
couldn't allow.
Well, Sheila,
Right, thank you everyone for coming back. Thank you for the new conditions and amended conditions that you've brought back to us, which we find has been very robust. So we're going to continue going the hearing. You've brought this to review. Would you like to, oh, and do bear in mind that we've read all the papers, all the statements. So if you'd just like to add or go through.
I think as a starting point,
Yeah.
committee, your stance on these conditions feel that would be an appropriate remedy for the review would be helpful to the committee as a starting point, Chair.
In which case, yeah, I will address maybe on the police's view of the conditions. But before that, we would just like to emphasize that the police have brought this review because namely the incident that happened on the 18th of March, but the police do recognise the benefits to the local community that have been brought by the HCA, and that is why, notwithstanding those events, the police have sought at all times to engage with the premises and work to avoid any repetition of it. And it is due to what has previously been a lack of engagement that we are seeking certain conditions, and that's just by way of a background. We would, if the committee would like to show some of the CCTV footage of the incident, and in particular in a closed session, not online to the public, given the nature of the incident and the presence of minors, and we propose to do that if the committee would like to see it and would find it.
Yes, we would. Yes.
After the session might be
Yes.
appropriate time. However, we can provide a short description or short summary of what happened, but I recognise that you've read papers. If it would help just to go through briefly what happened and then go through the conditions, or would it be more assistance to go?
I think because we have had ample time to read through,
Straight into.
yeah, if we can just go,
In the officer's statement.
yes.
Exactly. In that case, then we'll just go straight to the conditions. And in short, the police are broadly in support of these, and it has been the police's condition that basically 5 things would be necessary for the police to be comfortable, and that is liaise with someone other than Mr. Headley to ensure that no unaccompanied persons are on the premises after 10, a CCTV condition, a door security condition, and an amended dispersal policy. And these are key features that are in these conditions. So just turning to the first proposed, or the condition, which is that no accompanied persons under 18 shall be permitted on the premises after 10 unless they're accompanied by a parent or guardian. The purpose of this is essentially to prevent a repetition of the events of the 18th of March. We consider that this is proportionate, given that the centre, as we understand it, the Hibiscus Centre, is primarily focused on catering for the elderly population. We also are minded that there are events in which children or family members may wish to be present, and for that reason, we're accepting an exception for any children who are accompanied by a parent or guardian, and that is the proposed amendment. So overall, we are happy that this would serve to prevent repetition of the events. But yes, we would like to see no children after that time unless they are accompanied specifically by a parent or guardian. And the one point we would like to make clear is we don't think it would be acceptable to have a condition that just allows for children to be accompanied generally, as we think that's quite broad, and you could have incidents where one person could be accompanied by, say, a friend over the age of 18. And we think such a condition would be unclear, difficult to enforce, and may not address the problem that we have seen at this premises. That's the background to the first condition. Turning then to the second condition, which is that the Board of Trustees shall nominate and appoint a nominated person to be a single point of contact. And that this person should not be Mr. Headley and should be responsible for any entertainment parties and events after 8 o'clock. Now, there are a number of reasons for this and conditions. I'll try and break this down. The first thing is that the police really want to have someone that they can communicate with, and it has seen that relationships have broken down between Mr. Headley and the council and the police, and that is the reason for the exemption of Mr. Headley, that the police just want to be able to have conversations with someone who will take the licensing objective seriously and for a good engagement to take place between the police and the centre. The police want this liaison to happen in respect of any entertainment or parties. There was a proposal that initially that this would only be for private hire events, but we would like this to be across the board, and that any events that happen after 8 o'clock. And as we've seen, the main issues seem to happen for late night events. And it's not so much that the police want to have this person for any events that start after 8, but rather any events that are happening after that time. So that is the reason for some of the amendments. It's particularly late night events, and just someone to be in contact with. The police have also suggested that they would be informed, that the council will be informed of any changes to this person and who this person is at all times. So that's broadly the background to this, and it's just to keep ongoing engagement and ensure that these licensing objectives are met at all times.
I notice that you haven't put a time frame on this to be carried out. It's a great condition, but if they don't meet for 6 months, then when will we know when this person will be appointed? Not put a time frame on, have you discussed with them when they would appoint this particular person?
We understand that what the police's view is that all the conditions should be carried out before any event takes place. Any future event takes place. So these are conditions that should be on the license. So in the way we'd understand this to operate, but we take advice obviously from your legal advisor, would be that if they have not appointed somebody, then an event could not take place. From our discussions, and they may be able to correct it, we understand that a person has already been appointed, but we have not been yet informed of it. And that's why we have, in future, we'd like to be informed within 48 hours of that appointment. But that is our understanding, is that there is somebody already in.
There's somebody in line.
Someone's already.
I've spoken to Sergeant Murray, we'll give the details.
Right, lovely, thank you. Right, okay, thank you. If you'd like to proceed.
And the third condition that you can see is a CCTV condition. And there has not previously been a CCTV condition in place on the licence. We think that this is necessary in order to prevent crime, and also for the police to be, for this to be made available, or it's important that this is made available as soon as possible after the incident. Now, I understand the council have read the papers and they'll understand that there was a delay in getting the CCTV footage to the police after the incident, and essentially this is to prevent such a delay happening.
Can I just start a question? I'm not quite sure who that would be. Would it be Paddy or yourself? But we seem to have this GDPR thing keep cropping up about, because there's children involved or vulnerable people, we can't have the CC cameras turned over to you. We've had this only a couple of weeks ago. Could you tell me what our stance is on that?
So, police want to tell you.
Well, our stance is that when there's been a crime that has taken place, or a potential crime, that this not so much overrides it, but provides a justification for such footage to be handed over, and that therefore those concerns do not apply in this context, that there is, it's so much almost like rebutted in the sense that everyone has a right to privacy and there are those concerns, but once there is a crime in the protection of public safety, there is no issue in that being provided immediately to the police.
Right.
I agree with that, and the police would then be under a duty to redact anything from that. Or for example, when you have your papers, your green papers or whatever they are, we go into private session, but certainly I agree with the police's stance on that. If there is a request in relation to a potential crime that overrides it's difficult if somebody then personally asks for the CCTV, then those rules do apply, and you've got to only provide anything that takes out any identification of other people. But from the police's perspective, they have an overriding power to ask.
So, one of the other things that came up a little while ago was actually in the wording, made available. CCTV footage should be made available to the police. Is there any way that we can reword that, or is that in guidance or constitution?
Being suggested here, if you want to continue, and I'll have a look at that.
Thank you. So if you'd like to continue.
Unless it would assist, I was not going to propose to go through the CCTV condition.
No, yes,
You have it.
but we're very happy with that, yes.
And the only change or the suggestion you see that we, instead of referring to this DPS in 3F, we want to refer back to the nominated person. And I should make clear, and this wasn't made clear in these conditions, but we note that there is an existing condition on the license to nominate a designated premises supervisor. And we see this second condition that's on these proposed ones as replacing that.
Right, so that was
This would supersede it. So that's condition 2 would supersede it, and therefore any mention of the DPS, either in these ones or other ones, should be replaced by the
nominated person, yes.
It's more appropriate given
Yeah.
no alcohol license currently on the premise.
Okay.
So that was just to note.
Thank you. If we just look at the conditions C,
Yeah.
final section says screenshots and CCTV footage shall be made available to the police or authorised officers immediately upon request. I think that's a wording that I've seen in a significant number of premises licenses, and I would suggest that that's equivocal. It's not something that could be argued. It's a robust and well worded sentence.
Okay, turning then to the 4th condition.
Yes.
This is to require 2 licensed door supervisors to be on duty for any for any parties that continue past 10 o'clock. We consider that door supervisors are necessary, as we've seen from the incident on the 18th of March. There were knives seen being carried, and this is just to prevent any incident from happening within the premises. What was also noticeable from the CCTV footage is that some of the security guards that were on duty that evening did not seem to be able to use a metal detector correctly, and were at times like struggling with the premises. And this is just to ensure that there are 2 trained ones with SIA training that will be there.
So there will be the metal detectors that will have that will be under their remit.
That would be under their remit, is my understanding.
Yeah, it's not worded on there, but that would be a condition that you could have yourself if you wish to do so. Ones are not expensive, or to have that.
Okay, and bag searches?
Sorry? Again, that's something which we wouldn't necessarily have asked for here, but obviously that's a condition that if you felt necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Turning then to the 5th condition, we find this acceptable. This is proposed by the premises, like keeping an incident log. We have no issues with that, and we think that's a good practice for the premises to maintain. We don't have any further comments on it. Turning then to the 6th condition, this is a condition that the Metropolitan Police are increasingly asking for and think is increasingly relevant at this time, and this is for the premises to provide welfare and vulnerability engagement training, and as part of the Ask for Angela program. And the way the condition's worded is that the police will, the way it works, the police will provide this initial training to the nominated person, and anyone else can attend. At this time, this nominated person being the person we're referring to in the 2nd condition. That person will have the responsibility of passing on that training to the relevant staff members, and anyone else that they consider it would be helpful to have that training. The condition includes a provision for refresher training, and that means that this nominated person has an obligation to attend this refresher training and then pass on any updates to the relevant staff. And in addition, it requires Ask for Angela posters to be displayed at the premises. The other part of the condition, which I haven't mentioned, is that at the initial training given by the nominated person to staff members, the police and the licensing authority will be invited to attend this training. And we consider that's a good practice so that we can ensure that the adequate information has been passed across, but also for the police and the local authority to be there to answer any questions that anyone may have if there's something that has not been understood. And the final condition that's been proposed is to replace what is the existing condition 10 that requires a dispersal policy to be prepared and operated in consultation with the ASB nuisance team and police licensing officer with this proposed condition. And it's almost identical, except for what we're asking is for the dispersal policy to not just cover noise, which it currently does, but to cover the prevention of antisocial behaviour and crime, and that the police have already made it clear that they would be happy to be consulted on this and provide suggestions as to what could be included in this policy. And in addition, the other change is that the dispersal policy should be reviewed by the licence holder every 6 months. And this is just to ensure that it covers relevant issues, and whatever is seen as the most pressing problem in that area, for example, is included within the dispersal policy, and also just to see how it's working and if there's something not working for that to be changed. It's really just to broaden out the scope of the existing condition.
Just on that, the existing dispersal policy on page 27 is, I think, quite vague, but there are points that, with regards, something said in one of Katie's statement, where she said that he seemed a little bit remiss about things happening outside premises. Now, actually, on the present dispersal policy, it does say to cover in and around and within the vicinity. So is there any way that we can broaden that to make sure that it's not just, if it's not outside the front gate or just 2 doors down, that the SIA people will not go and tongues and ties this morning. So they won't go and assist if there's problems a little bit further down the road, but because that road, I'm going to ask you to put the map up if possible. Sorry, I don't mind. Because as I said, it's almost like a cul-de-sac. There's like it's one way in, one way out. Am I correct?
It's a block, councillor. It's an LTN.
I'll show you.
Yeah. Colin, that was the. Again, by the clerk, but it's a.
Oh, that's a CCTV. So that's the centre, obviously, and then you've got them bollards that just stop people going continuing down there, and they only can go down that way. The other way takes you down to Cookshank. Sorry, takes down to Cookshank, which is that way there, and then you've got the
That's the little corner
shop of Cookshank. That way is a dead end. There's a playground there. You can't get traffic through there. So the only way out of this, coming this way, is literally out of there, do a left, and that takes you to Leytonstone Road down there, down to the end.
Okay, so could we go back to bookings?
Centre?
Yes. And could you show me also, while we're here, sorry, I will get back to you, Idmiston Road and Chatsworth Road?
There's instant, it's called, this is that road. So the road that Henderson Road is that one. So you can't get to it by car because you've bollard across it.
Yeah, pedestrians could.
Pedestrians can
Yeah.
obviously clearly
Yeah.
down there. And I think that's the other one you're talking about. Oh. What other road did you say?
Chatsworth.
Don't know where that one is. Let me see if I,
In effect, they're a fair way away from the actual centre. They're not like,
if I can get to,
sorry, Idviston, you've got to go down to the, isn't the bottom of Buckingham, and then
Brookshank. Yeah, there's Chatsworth. So this is Chatsworth. Yeah. So the,
centre,
it's there.
there, right.
So it's down.
So it's a little way away. Just wanted to get a better view of the actual location. Okay, so I was asking you about the dispersal policy, but you're going to be working with the license regards to this dispersal policy?
Yes, so the police licensing officer will be involved in drafting a new dispersal policy. And that will also be the way the conditions word is, it's going to be in consultation with the nuisance team and the ASB team as well. And that is so that there would be a new dispersal policy for which, as a result of all this consultation, which we hope will be a more robust policy and go some way to addressing the concerns we have. We would note that there are limits to which we can ask the license holder to control behaviour when it gets too far away from the premises. And that's why it will always be limited to roads within the vicinity. We obviously expect this to, and would see the way it's worded in the dispersal policy should be interpreted reasonably, and that obviously would mean that you cannot claim that there is no responsibility for behaviour that takes place 2 doors down, but obviously streets away would be a bit problematic. But that is why we're hoping that as a result of all the consultation, that the wording of this dispersal policy will be more robust.
Yes.
And will cover, as we said, the areas that we think are the police consider are problem areas.
Right. Thank you. Anything else?
The only additional points, as we said, we'll maybe go through in more detail at the time of when we go through the CCTV footage, we can, it might be of assistance to explain what can be seen there, but we might wait until to do that to the closed session. The only other point is that the police will be in support of a period of suspension in order to ensure that these conditions are all complied with in advance of any further events taking place. And in particular, the dispersal policy is a key concern, and we'd like the time to make sure that this is as robust as policy, and would not like to see any events taking place until that dispersal policy has been agreed following consultation. And so that's the police's position on that.
Thank you.
You were suggesting a period of suspension.
So, sorry, was that how long?
Yes.
Whatever the committee would feel reasonable in relation to ensuring that these, I'm also obviously aware that the persons maybe want to make representations relating to noise and things that have to be done. So I think that's something that would have to be done collaboratively with all parties to ensure that there's sufficient time to ensure all works are being completed regarding these conditions and other conditions which have not been met yet.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for your representation. Councillor Makwana, have you any questions for the police?
Yeah, I've got one question in regards to dispersal policy. Once that's been set up before policy we put it into action, can us and the officers see it, please?
Yes, there's no problem with that. And if it would assist, the council is more than welcome to add that as part of the condition, just to say that it must be reviewed by the council. The police would have, absolutely would support that to be added to the condition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Vaughan, any questions for the police?
Yeah, just new conditions number 7. Who's that? That's been done, the new policy, let's see. Number seven, you're number seven.
Yes,
Okay, in condition with the ASB nuisance dealing
yes,
licensing officer. The license holder is prepared and operate in accordance with written disposal policy. Is that a new policy
yes,
that you're going to do?
yes.
Who's going to read that? How's that going to be legally binding?
The way in which we understand it to be legally binding, and again, we would take assistance.
The wording of the condition is that it's going to be reached in agreement with the parties that are listed there. One of your colleagues just asked whether the licensing authority office is in that list as well.
And the other point to note is the fact that the condition requires the premises to operate in accordance with that policy is a way that if this policy is breached, then this condition is breached. That is ensuring that the policy is enforceable.
Okay, are there any questions for the police? Graham?
Just a brief point more than a question, Chair, if I may. I had a word with Sergeant Murray outside, and I don't know if how the idea was we keep the existing dispersal policy, and I will consult with the sergeant on building in the ASB and the crime side of it. Obviously, it's not something we do every day. Dispersal policies are, but the other bits are relatively new. But I think I agree that we agree, Stuart, that we work together on that. And
From my point of view, though, it's that because it's predominantly noise and nuisance as well, it shouldn't just be down to the police to make the decision. Obviously, we need to consult with other persons. So it needs to be collaborative across all parties before a decision is made, whether that is suitable or not.
Suitable. I think so. That's a good idea. Okay, are there any other questions for the police?
no, I know.
No?
Sorry, any other questions? No other questions. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I don't know whether we should do the CCTV now before we move on.
Yes.
It's going to have to be closed.
Yes, yeah. So can you stop the recording for me, please? All right. So can we then go on to the next representation, please?
Please finish with everything.
No.
I pretty much wrote a lot in my statement. So there were other things that we were we felt and stuff. So we were worried about a young girl that came out. She looked quite intoxicated, and we noticed that there was a young man that had brought in a big gas canister that we later on saw youngsters inhaling balloons. I mean, it's all documented in my statement, so I think that you've published it.
Yes. Okay. So I did ask earlier if that particular night was on a Thames, and you said no.
No, it wasn't.
They have no license to sell alcohol, and yet you said you saw a young woman that looked intoxicated.
I can't assume that.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for the police? All right, can we move on? Next representation. So who have we got next? Environmental or trading standards, which one?
It's environmental.
Environmental. Thank you.
Motion. Relation to licensing objectives. License viewed in relation to noise and nuisance in NC. Subsequently stated appeal in August 2022. Additional condition including a requirement that noise limiting devices installed. Was resident. March, 18th of March, 2023, colleague carrying out routine. Been subject to noise complaints at 2340. This community centre, the ambulances passed us. Hibiscus, a large group of teenage boys hanging around Buckingham Road using nitrous oxide balloons. Spoke to the police to ascertain what had occurred before leaving the area. No time did I see anyone from the Hibiscus trying to disperse customers. Between December 2022 and March 2023, I was in email contact with Mr. Kelly in relation to the sound insulation works. Till suggested April 22nd, the date to set the limiter and a fixed temporary seals. Basically, the limiter is still not in place. Mr. Headley has suggested next week. So suggested last week. On the 22nd of April, I was working with my colleague, Eric Ward, 19th Hibiscus. On arrival, I saw Mr. Headley heading away from the Hibiscus towards the corner shop. As being parked, I saw Mr. Headley entering Hibiscus. Outside Hibiscus, loud music was clearly audible. An SIA door supervisor from the door went into Hibiscus, spoke to Mr. Headley, who advised that noise limiter had not been purchased yet. However, the notices required by the licence the outside area were in place. Mr. Headley explained that the outside area was not being used at all. Mr. Headley accompanied us outside and then went inside to get the music to read. Complaint from a local resident concerning loud music. Currently, 19 complaints, 6 households about loud music and amplified voices coming from this. Specifically included in prior to 2017, when Mr. Headley was appointed as a director. Household only ever received one service premises. That's since they held a license. Hibiscus have had more than enough time to comply with the conditions added to their license in August 2022. And that's my representation. I've provided the list of complaints from there's still issues. Music ongoing, people outside, making a lot of noise, shouting. People went in November last year. Someone had to go and speak. They'd left the door. Loitering had noise in March. I was at 5 to 11 loitering noise. So clearly the dispersal. They haven't taken it. It's just a piece of paper. So it does need to take more robust and they actually need to comply with it. Actually put it into what's in relation to the condition. There's some extension, allow them to carry out the works appropriately. We're also approaching the warmest time of the year when Hibiscus they have the worst adverse impact on local residents if they're not in compliance with these restrictions. So a period of suspension would be a benefit for local residents as well.
Thank you. Any questions about the form?
And one more thing, sorry, in relation to the conditions.
You've had to come up with some, didn't you?
Condition number 7.
Page, on the police conditions.
Where it said ASD. It's change to commercial environment.
Oh, yeah. PhD.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
I've got one question. Thank you for your report, Ian. On 22nd of April, you said you were working there with Kerry Wood about 8 o'clock in the evening. Can you just tell us and the committee how loud the music was at 8 o'clock?
It was too loud, yeah, within nuisance. So.
At any time, have you visited any of the residents whilst this music has been going on? Actually been into their properties?
I've been into a couple of properties since the 18th of March.
And
Noise monitoring equipment in one property.
right,
But the resident didn't report any noise and didn't make use of the noise monitoring equipment on that occasion.
right. So you haven't actually experienced it from any, from your perspective?
Yeah, not since the appeal. Prior to the appeal, I have been down there at times when there's been loud music.
Right. And you don't think nothing has changed?
Doesn't look like it to me.
Okay, so you know the noise limiter has not been put in, and so I assume none of the installation work that was discussed has been done either.
We did, we went on the 22nd of April when we went down. The Hibiscus, we did talk to Mr. Works, was planning on doing some double glazing works to the skylights, room, currently single glazed, they're weak spots. As far as I understand it, that now, price of that has increased, so it's now unaffordable. We did suggest that we board over those windows, which reduce them considerably. He was reluctant to do that, obviously, because that is the only natural light allowed into that room.
Right, okay. How many exits are there to this property?
I think there are, we've got the main entrance to the front and there's exits on two sides.
Two sides, there's three ways out.
Alleyways both sides.
Right, okay. Boarding up the windows, wouldn't that cause some problems for fire?
These are high level skylights. So
Right, so it would have no effect.
Tower to actually do the.
Okay, all right. Now you cover most of Newham and all noise nuisance complaints. Have you had many other premises that give or have so much activity as in complaints with regards to noise?
Infrequently, yeah. Not, we don't get many cases.
Quite like,
The level of complaints.
right, okay, all right. Any other questions? Councillor?
Is may I ask?
Yes, of course.
In the papers attached from the previous proceedings, I noticed that there was a noise abatement notice served previously. Was there any further action taken once the abatement notice had been served? It wasn't appealed against from what I've statutory nuisance.
Starts proceeding.
Okay.
Right, thank you. Any questions? Graham, any questions?
No, Chair, I'll cover it in my presentation.
Yeah? Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on. The next person, Colin, who is it? License. Thanks, Steve.
With me, the grounds of crime disorder, public safety. Basis of the application and information supplied by the Metropolitan Police in relation to the order on the 18th, 2023. Children's and the premises CCTV footage to the police in relation to this serious incident. The police and licensing and have a lack of understanding the severity of the incident and upholding all four of the license objective and conditions in relation to the license. The premises is a community centre for the elderly. However, the premises does appear to be operating a number of late night events listed as fundraising events, and seem to be either hiring out the premises or hosting different events. The licensing team would like clarification. Due diligence checks are carried out to find out at the premises IA security are employed to ensure no crime and disorder takes place during these events. If these type of events are to continue, the team would like to see a dispersal plan implemented and for staff to engage in appropriate welfare and vulnerability training. The venue has held a number of temporary events, TENS, which within the last 6 months, these have been ranged from fundraising events to parties, and there have been several applicants, and these are listed below. I'll go through them, Chair, they are please.
Yeah.
See, the licensing authority would like the applicant to demonstrate to the licence subcommittee that the venue will not undermine all 4 licence objectives and how the venue plans to implement appropriate controls to ensure instances of this violent disorder do not occur in the future. Also to ensure that CCTV is provided to either the police or licence authority if requested for any future incidents. I would ask the subcommittee to consider all options available to them in relation to these premises.
So I take it, do you agree with the conditions that the police have proposed, Steve?
Yeah, yes, Chair, I do. I've obviously read through them, and with the additional changes that have been implemented, I'm happy for any conditions to be put forward for the so.
Okay, and to George's?
What you do your trade standards.
Oh, sorry, George, not quite ready. I was asking Steve, and the conditions that George has put through?
148.
Lovely, okay. Where am I? Okay, have you been called out to any of these events on the TENS?
I haven't, no.
Never been to the premises?
I've only dealt with applications that come forward to the events, and one recently, which was rigorous.
Well, 1 or 2? 2 TENS since the review?
Since review, 1.
1, okay, all right, and that was withdrawn. All right,
I think there's 2.
I think there's, what I've read, there's 2. So you put it as a, what did you put it as, KB/3?
Yes.
But you said it was
Yeah.
exhibited and we wasn't able to see them, they're not in the agenda.
So that one was from Mr. Headley, he put it in.
Is that the one on the 4th to the 5th of March? 5 until 3 AM in the morning?
I've just closed it down.
Oh, don't worry.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I have it here, so
go ahead.
I need to make it bigger. I can't see it. This one was from a Clifford Headley.
Yep.
It was for an event
8,
date on from 8 till midnight on the 7th of the 5th. 1800, sorry, till midnight on the 7th,
okay,
6 till 5. That was for on premises, 150 people. I believe was that a late temporary event notice? That was a late temporary event notice, so they wasn't able to have it because there was representation and I done a notice.
right, okay.
No appeal to a late temporary event, so that was what.
Right, so as of the review, so just that I'm clear, only two temporary events notices come to office
To us,
and,
one as a late tens and they weren't able to have it. That was that one I've just read out, and there was
Yeah.
another one that come through that Steve dealt with. It wasn't from the venue, it was from a lady, I can't remember, and they decided to move the event somewhere else, so that event didn't go ahead either.
okay, thank you, Steve. Any questions, Steve?
Yeah, I've got one question, just for clarity. Page 132, you've listed all the 10 that were issued from November 22 until 20. No, not. Issued.
Okay, yes.
What I wanted to find out, did we have the capacity of people listed, like our officer just said there was 150 listed on the last application. But do we know how many was listed on each application?
About checking it.
Have to go through all of them, which is going to be quite time consuming. But they can't go over 500 or 499 really. So,
There's
but it's always below that amount.
Okay, that's fine.
Wouldn't accept it.
carried on with it.
Thank you. Councillor Vaughan, any questions for Steve?
Yes, one question. You said you interviewed Mr. Headley.
No, the police and licensing team interviewed Mr. Headley. I believe that's in the police report. That was the police licensing officers and Colin Hunt. I was president.
The word present. Okay. And one of the reasons which you concluded when you said you had no confidence in the licensee based on police evidence.
That was based on the police interview with Mr. Headley and the licensing, which they could elaborate on.
Councillor Vaughan?
Sorry, just so it wasn't an interview, it was a discussion. We asked Ms. Headley a discussion with it so we could talk about what had happened. It wasn't an interview. We didn't interview him. It was a discussion. It wasn't, it wasn't under pace. We wanted him to come in so we could go through. I mean, police done it and I accept the invite, but it wasn't an interview, just to confirm.
An informal chat.
Yeah, and of course, any questions for the last?
Chair, thank you.
Okay, last but not least. Leading ten.
All around the event. All one part of the event is. Instance of abuse have been attended in 16 birthday party. I know at the time the police were called out of 2317. It appears that there were insufficient procedures and due to adequately protection of the licensed objective. I believe licensed premises must take the utmost care of children and take the protection of children seriously. In this case, it would appear little was done around children. Further conditions. Listed the conditions.
Yes, please.
The 18 parties must be booked. I don't get image at the time. These are. Any parties for 18 years of alcohol is served. Checks must be made during the event that anyone under 18 is not supplied alcohol. Personal license holder shall be present on the premises to authorize the sale of supplied alcohol when made available on a temporary event. Alcohol is not permitted on the premises during any events for under 18s. Any events for under 18s should cease at 2200. Challenge 25 must be in operation during any events for alcohol sale and supply, and staff that should be trained. Staff training must be recorded in a training log and kept on the premises at all times, made available upon request to Metropolitan Police, licensed officers and training staff officers.
Thank you. Just going back to any events for under 18 should 2200 hours. Now, Paddy, where did we see that are accompanied by a parent or an adult?
So I think the two different issues there. Condition one, general condition, that's on the police condition. That's saying, if, for example, if there was a family event or the event where family members were there, then that condition would reflect into that. And the condition in Mr. McDougall's conditions refers to an under 18s event.
Right.
An event which is focused on an under 18s audience. So I think they're seeking to deal with two different things. They don't contradict each other.
Right.
They're supportive two different environments.
Thank you.
I believe it was the 16th birthday party that was the cause of the issue.
Yeah.
Obviously, that would be different to somebody having a wedding, for example.
Okay, thank you. Do you believe the conditions that you've put forward are robust enough to go on to a license? Do you think they cover everything?
I think they cover most of things. I mean, if we can't let everything covered, expected things to come up. But I think they are robust enough and I think it would help. And maybe help the purpose.
Yeah.
To do to protect children.
Right, and will also be assisting on the dispersal policy. Just you won't. So it's just environment and okay, I've got that. So in your view, would you say that you consider the community centre for the elderly more of a community centre for the elderly or for youngsters? Because I feel like the shift is changing. Like I've seen representation from some of the residents saying they have special schools there and things during the day. And they used to, I don't know if they still do, you might be able to help me later on, still play dominoes and stuff in the evening. But all the problems that seem to emanate from this premises are later on and from youngsters under the age of, I don't know.
Colin might say that all noise isn't from young events.
Yeah.
I think it's from later evening events. The community centres, I suppose, have changed a bit over the years. And they do spread out, and a lot of them do help young. But it's one of the ones on Queens Road West now is hosts the boxing club, which I can around somewhere. So things like that have helped the youth as well. So the community centre should be for everybody, but this, I think, an instance here are more around event centres and maybe not community.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Are there any questions, councillor? Any questions?
No, Chair, I'll cover the points.
I complete. Yes, have I reached everyone? Okay, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, I just think that Colin's right to remind you that obviously you've read the resident representations that
Yes.
are here today, but
No, to be noted,
they have been
read.
digested before the meeting.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Colin, for the reminder. All right, so your turn. Your turn.
Chair, I can clarify one point for you at the start. On the 18th of the event we're talking about, there was no alcohol available at the premises. It was an under 16s birthday party or a 16-year-old's birthday party, and Mr. Headley and the trustees do not allow alcohol on the premises. So that covers that, hopefully. As you've heard, we've had discussions with the police about their conditions, and we have the revised draft, which I think it's fair to say we are happy to accept, and we agree to those depending on your determination today. But I'll go through the history briefly. The Hibiscus Caribbean Elderly Association is a 30-year-old charity we're talking about, not a club, not a private company or anything seeking to make money. It is a charity. You will have heard it does a lot of good work for the community, elderly people and young people. We're all supposed to be an inclusive society now, which we all welcome. It helps young people in the community. They provide daycare, art display, and after school club 4 days a week with 60 children attending. For example, we have Friday prayers. The imam comes along and conducts the prayer sessions, and on Sunday they have the church. So it's something for everybody. Now, I hope this doesn't sound too horrible, but the rent went up from £3,000 per annum to this is a new home building, to £45,000 per annum. So quite a big jump. That's a separate issue, but that's trying to raise by holding these events. It was a massive increase. They get no grant as a charity for the elderly or even youngsters from the council or from the government. The state of the building, quite frankly, I've been there several times. I've known Mr. Headley for several years now, is poor, to say the least. It's a single glazed building. The officers have referred to, my comments are not aimed at the officers at all. We're talking about the state of the building purely. The officers have referred to the skylights. Yes, Mr. Headley doesn't want to lose those because in the main hall, that is the sort of daylight. And of course, both older people and youngsters like daylight, especially at this time of year. I mean, that's what it's all about, to live in winter. But they also have some 8 events in there, I think it's that were, I presume, formerly for air conditioning, that are open. And I would suggest that is one of the main sources this escapes through. So we will be looking to the council's lettings office or whichever department it is for assistance with that, because those clearly need to be plugged. And that's something that I think is reasonable. Yes, they need to attend to the skylights. Something have to be done with those, about that separately, but certainly these vents need to be plugged. Turning to Mr. Headley himself, I have now known him for several years. Highly educated man, articulate and intelligent, and devoted to the HCEA, to its members and the work they do. He was primarily during his working life both a long-term social worker, and he worked on the Parliamentary Committee for Race Relations. So that's the background. We're talking somebody devoted to the public sector, to public service, to his community, not somebody who wants to go out and annoy his neighbours. The comment was made about him, I'm not naming a police officer or anything, about him being rude. He's not rude, he's passionate about this venue and the people that he serves. And as the secretary, he has done his job and continues to do it. Now, as I said, I've known him for several years. I no longer regard Mr. Headley just as a client, he's a friend. So I feel as passionate about this venue as he does, because there's a lack. I'm 70 this month, or next month. There is a lack of venues for older people these days. Things have been cut. We're not blaming the council, we're not blaming the government, it's just happened. But the same applies for youngsters. There's nowhere, when I was a kid, at after school club. They may have some classes now at schools, but the facilities aren't there. That is why you see so many people, in my opinion, hanging around on the street. And while we're talking about that, Mr. Headley's been criticised for during a meeting that people outside are no longer the responsibility of the club. His powers and the trustees' powers are very limited. Yes, IA are licensed and have certain powers, but they don't have the powers of the police in the street. And we didn't say, we're not criticising the officers here. We're talking about the situation across the country. What we need is a return to good old fashioned policing. When as a kid, I never knew if a policeman was coming around the corner and I was going to get my ears boxed. That's what we're talking about. He can't stop the crime on the street. That event you saw took 50, 70 yards away. They can't go down there and stop it. He's my age. And I don't want to see him get hurt.
Graham, sorry to intervene. We are talking about having SIA guards there. They were they official SIA guards?
The lady
Right.
that saw in the high vis,
Yes.
I checked with Mr. Headley just now, was approved. He saw her back.
And the other three guys that were,
No, I don't think they were they? Their parents, weren't they?
No, those were the event organisers, the child's family.
There was the child, the person whose birthday it was, that was their family.
okay, sorry, I'll let you continue. Just one more question. How many people were in that event on that night, on the 18th? How many youngsters were in there,
That evening,
roughly?
I think that overall, probably just under 100 youngsters must have popped in and out during the course of the evening.
Right, one SIA certified guard.
If I might respond to that.
Yes, of course.
There was a single SIA operative on the evening. However, that needs to be put in the context of our general practice. 99% of our events are either family events or hibiscus events. The advice that we give to families is that we cannot afford the cost of the security. But as a family event, we would recommend that you have at least one SIA operative that could be supported by a member or two of the family who can vouch for your guest list. Because we're very keen to ensure that only your guests are being given access and to restrict the entry of those who are simply gate crashing. And in those circumstances, we have tended, well, not tended, we simply have said, okay, you know, you've got one person who is registered to do this kind of work, but we don't feel that that is necessarily sufficient, but we don't want to burden you with the additional cost of having to hire two. We understand that you are low-income families, we understand that you're pensioners and things of that ilk, so we tend to support the single operative with other people who can vouch for the legitimacy of those who are coming through the door. That's how we've managed it, and I would respectfully submit that we've not had any issues in our building at all in the 7 years I've been there. And the approach is one in which we essentially take a soft approach, not particularly visible, encouraging the family and the people who know the guests to perform that as best as they can, as opposed to our intervention.
Thank you. I'll come back to you in a moment. Graham, would you?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say in passing that the reason we mentioned about the rent going up and other things and cost of living, it's everybody's, it is making the case, the position for Hibiscus to stay open much more difficult, hence the need. They don't particularly want to be there late, but they have to hire out the hall to raise funds to keep the place functioning and provide the facilities, the events or the daycare, the key classes, that sort of thing for the older people and the children. That money, then this is a non-profit organisation, that money they generate from those events goes on the essential work for the elderly and for the youngsters in the area. The after school club, for example. So that's the picture there. Now, I'm just going to pick up on a few of the, I'll mention one comment that's been made in the application. Comment's been made about Mr. Headley being rude, as I was trying to say before. Mention at all. Comment was made about Mr. Headley going to the meeting. He was advised it was an informal meeting. That's the position we were in. He told the officer concerned that he had to do the daycare from 10 o'clock. That's one of his functions. Does the daycare, is it 10 till 4? 10 till 3 for I guess older people as much as anything else. So he had to be back at the venue or that couldn't have gone ahead. Those people would have been either left outside or had to go home. So Mr. Headley was there on time?
At 9 o'clock.
He was there at 9 o'clock at Stratford Police Station. I understand the officers had to find a room and that the officers themselves arrived 10 to 15 minutes later. So Mr. Headley was on a tight time budget. And I think you said you stayed there 20 minutes and
I was on the premises for half an hour.
Half an hour,
I arrived at 9 o'clock and I
Right.
left at 9:30. The officer arrived at 9:10. The meeting started around about 9:18 and concluded at 9:30. So all in total, the meeting lasted approximately 12 minutes.
okay, and then he had to get his cab back to Forest Gate to get there in time to do the daycare for the elderly people, which these days I would suggest is quite a priority. The association are sorry and deeply regret the event on the 18th of May, sorry, 18th of March that this review is about. I have spoken to the Sergeant. I understand the young man has made a recovery from that, and we're all, along with the police, we are all grateful for that. But I stress the incident. That's why I asked about the stabbing. There was nothing inside the Hibiscus. No stabbings, no fights. Despite what was reported, there were no fights. Yet the evidence is on the, you know, you've got up there and you've seen anything like that, or the police would have provided some evidence. There is no evidence, and Mr. Headley has confirmed there was no stabbing or fighting inside. This incident took place some 50 to 70 yards from the venue. Now, we accept there is a causal link, because if there hadn't been a party, the kids wouldn't have been there. But it appears to me, if you've seen the whole footage, and I have discussed it with the sergeant briefly, but we're not going to go into detail, obviously. There was a gang hanging around, quite clearly, masked, wearing head coverings. We all know what that type of gang is. They were hanging around. They may have had a target in mind, I don't know. But there was interaction between the people outside and coming in and out of the club. Maybe that's something we need to look at. They're in. I think that's something that might have to be considered rather than dispersing with people on the streets. Maybe that could be looked at as part of the dispersal policy when I talk to the sergeant. But as I say, there's no evidence of anything inside. How far down the road does it become out of their control? Now, the guidance is quite clear. I'm sure Mr. will tell me if I'm wrong, that people on their way home or outside cannot be held to be the responsibility of the licence holder. The immediate venue, yes, we would accept that. But when they're 70 yards away, there's nothing he can do. Maybe you could argue they should have called the police quicker if they knew it was going on. And I know I've seen the whole footage, so I know the residents did call the. We regret the whole incident took place. This was supposed to be a 16-year-old's birthday party, not result in what happened road. But what I'm saying is I think there was a gang involved in that somewhere along the line. It may have been a turf war, I don't know. I can't throw any evidence to support it, but it is feasible that's what it was. Why else would you have people wearing masks, hoods and carrying knives? There were no knives found in the club. Sorry, in the association. Those were the people outside carrying that. I would suggest could have been the gang members. Were not invited to the party. I think Mr. Headley has told you that they do keep a guest list, something that can be looked at and timed on. So if you're not on the guest list, you don't go in. That's one thing. I have discussed that with Mr. Headley before, and he's quite prepared to do that. If you're not on the guest list, you're not coming in. Whether it's a birthday party or a wedding, something like that. And many venues, as you know, where there is an event book, do actually do that. Anyway, you've heard there was SIA present, a door supervisor who was licensed. And there were also the parents, which is part of their current booking policy. When you book, you have to agree, if it's something like this, you have to agree to pay for the SIA because they can't afford it. It's prices go sky high, but they also have to, a number of parents have to stay to safeguard, and the parents were there. Those were relatives, I understand, that you saw outside doing the wanding, for better word, and they do have their own wands. They have got a security wand there. So people were using that to stop people bringing knives in or weapons into the premises. Notwithstanding, the Hibiscus wish to apologise to the responsible authorities, to the police, to yourselves, Chair, and your colleagues, and to the residents for any disturbance caused. And subject to your decision, will work with the police and licensing authority to prevent a recurrence. They are fully aware of their responsibilities. I've been through those with Mr. Headley, and I'm quite satisfied he understands what he's talking about, and of the responsibilities of Hibiscus to safeguard children. We've spoken to the police about that. They will be providing the wave training. I would imagine Mr. Headley will be involved. We have got a nominated person that's been decided on by the Board of Trustees. Those details, I say, I'm not going to put on the public record. I will provide that to Sergeant Murray directly. They will implement and work with the conditions we've agreed with the police, subject, as I say, to your decision. The revised conditions, we believe, will address both the licensing authorities' concerns and the police licensing team's concerns, mainly around safeguarding children. That is the priority. But to have the wave training and Ask Angela on top will also protect women and girls, which is essential.
Will you be setting up that training? Will you be setting up the training?
No, the Sergeant Murray is going to, has kindly offered, and we're grateful to the Sergeant, to go to Hibiscus, train the nominated person, and we've done the training.
Yeah.
Fantastic course.
Yeah.
Credit to the police for doing that. They will be trained, the nominated person and Mr. Headley. If he wants me there, I'll go. Have a cup of coffee with him. But yeah, any other training on the licensing act, the provisions of the act in relation to the license, the other bits and pieces, dispersal policy, we will be helping him with. I have discussed with the Sergeant extending the current dispersal policy to add in the crime, prevention of crime, and the ASB. That's a little bit outside my field, so I would be grateful for any advice that he can give me on that, and we'll talk about that separately. There's been a comment made about the CCTV request. Now, this was one that really irked me. It really did. There was no condition on the licence requiring CCTV. We've heard from Mr. Were on that. Mr. Headley was prepared to provide it, as he indicated to the police. But the parents of some of the children, these are 16-year-olds, in law, they're minors. The parents.
But the children that were outside though, were they?
Sorry?
They were not the children that.
We're talking about, I presume, the ones that inside may have been covered on that footage. The party attendees' parents, not all of them, some of them objected. and they exercise their rights under the General Data Protection Regulations, which is still in force in the UK. Whether we like it or not, it's still here. And I suggest that does really protection. I'm sorry to say, there is some breakdown in relations between the ethnic communities and the police, and they didn't want their information given to the police. Not that we're suggesting the children done anything wrong at all, but that is the parents' right to express that opinion. Now, I consulted my barrister again. It's the second time I've consulted him about this last night. He kindly phoned me back. He's known to Mr. Were, but I'm not obviously going to name him in here. It's not fair. His opinion is that given there was no condition on the licence, the officers have quoted to me a provision of PACE, either section 18 or 19, I forget which one it was, which can enable the police to have that hard drive or the footage if the request is made lawfully while they're lawfully on the premises. I understand the request was made by telephone. Now, in my opinion and our barrister's opinion, that power does not apply because it was not made while the officers were lawfully on the premises. Made by telephone, so that power's gone. The barrister advised me they should have supported, got a warrant, and then they recovered Mr. Headley if he'd given it to them. If the parents had in turn wanted to sue him for breaching their rights under the GDPR, which they are entitled to do. So that is our barrister's advice.
Paddy, is that correct? Your understanding?
It's not entirely in accordance with my understanding of the regulations at all. My view is how I expressed it previously. I think if the police are looking to a potentially serious crime, they have the rights to ask to see that footage. My own view on that is clear because I've dealt with it from both sides whilst acting for the police and also whilst acting for private individuals. I don't know how much further we can take this. What's happened, and I think that both parties are suggesting a much more robust CCTV position moving forward, but that would be my advice. It's not entirely in accordance with what's being said. The only point that I would say as well is that Mr. Hopkins is relying on a conversation with somebody else that he's putting before you, but it may not be that your decision will centre on whether, this might be a small issue, I don't know, but if it isn't, then we can look at that point further.
Okay, thank you. Graham, please continue.
Thank you, Chair. But I mean, as Mr. Were says, the condition going on the licence would sort the position out completely. That, in my opinion, that condition should have been on the licence, but it wasn't. It will be, I've no doubt. As I say, his hands were tied by the trustees anyway. He's only a member of the board. If he's outvoted, he has to follow their advice. As you've heard, it was provided to the police. It has been provided to the police, and it's on there. So eventually, it was overcome. The community, the HCA, are willing to work within law with the police, the licensing authorities, trading standards, and the CEHT. We've accepted the conditions that trading standards have suggested, reasonable and proportionate. The only one I had concerns about, and I have expressed to Mr. McDougall, is the requirement for a personal licence holder. This premises does not at this time have a licence to sell alcohol. It would be an unnecessary and unfair expense on top of everything else they've got to pay for. The insulation, the noise limiter, etc., and having that installed, to ask them to go and spend a couple £100 getting a personal licence that they don't need, quite frankly. He will be given, Mr. Headley and his nominated person will be given training by us in the provisions of the Act when it comes to the conditions that Mr. McDougall is asking, which apart from that condition, we agree with. Turning to the noise conditions, we accept there has been slippage there. It comes back to funding. Noise limiter costs money. They are in the process of trying to do it and to get one, and they are trying to do it as soon as possible. He has been in touch with Mr. McConnell and will remain so until the work is done and the limiter is put in. I mean, I would say, obviously, when these conditions, various conditions are added to the licence, if in the future they are for a temporary event notice, apart from the powers that environmental health and the police have got to object to them, those conditions would be added to the license. That's how it normally works. So I normally do that with Mr. Stokes. We put a 10 in, he objects to it. We agree the license conditions and it goes through. So I would not expect to put a license through in Europe, 10 through in Europe without adding the license conditions. It's something we do as a matter of policy. So we would do that, but the police would require us to do that, I'm sure. As I say, they're willing to work together. We believe that with the additional conditions, the CCTV, the SIA, the incident book, restriction of under 18s to the condition that's agreed, don't ask me to remember it off the top of my head, but the one that's been now agreed with the police, that moving forward, that the licence and objectives will be fully promoted and we can avoid this hopefully ever happening again. We would like to, it's a separate issue, we'd like to see police patrols in the area. I accept the police haven't got the resources. As I say, I'm not having to go at the police at all. That's for the government to resolve, but we would like to see old style policing. That is something that Mr. Headley and I feel quite strongly about. And they never known if the policeman was coming around the corner, you never know, they wouldn't be hanging around. You can always hope that. I've covered the issues with we believe there was a gang in that area on that night. Covered the issues with the noise. I can say the notices that we were required to display are on display. That's it. We will be taking up the other issues with the lettings department. Mr. Headley has stated again this morning, he will work with Mr. McConnell, read the rest of the magistrate's conditions. Whilst obviously it's a matter for you, Chair, to decide what your determination is. Heard the word suspension mentioned, use that strenuously, on the grounds that in the future funding of because cutting off their funds, they've already got events booked for June and July, so losing those would adversely affect not just the future of this nation, so getting these undertaken. We would ask for a period 2 months to carry out the works and get them done. Not the conditions agreed with the police. I mean, obviously those would take impact immediately. The 7 that we've agreed. The only thing that would take some time would be to get the cameras sorted inside. Have you got cameras inside? There are currently no cameras inside. So that part's got to be done. There's a camera outside. So that's what we would ask for a period of time to get that done.
So just to be clear, could you repeat that? You're asking for a period of.
Asking for a period of time. Changes, not the only one as far as the police are concerned that we need a change for is to put the cameras inside. The venue has no cameras.
No.
So we're asking for time to do that. But as far as the noise, CEHT are concerned, it's the limiter and blocking the holes in the ceiling. That's what we're asking for a period of time.
Sorry, the period of time is over how long?
How long would you need to do that with events in June, July? 2 months?
At the minimum of 2 months.
They would need 2 months to find the money. Their funding is so tight at the moment, they would need 2 months for that.
2 months to get the cameras inside up and running.
Yeah, the camera's outside already, but the one inside would, I think
Have you got cameras on all the exits? Could you, sorry, I'm
Apologies.
very distracting. Have you got cameras on
No,
all the exits?
no, cameras are only on the main entrance and exit to the building, which is the frontage as you see it.
Right.
There are no cameras on the fire escapes, which we have 3.
Which you do, yes, okay,
No internal cameras.
right, okay.
what we discussed, I think, with the sergeant was obviously covering the main doors for your head and shoulder shot as people come in. Also having the main hall covered. So there's a large hall inside, which is where most of your functions take place, isn't it? So we'd have a camera there to cover, wide angled one to cover the inside. Comes back to costings. Oh, there's a small gallery as well, so that would need a camera.
There's
So
a bar.
yeah, and a bar. So I think we're looking realistically 4 cameras. The hall, the gallery.
All internal areas, it would be the hall, the gallery.
I don't think they're worrying so much about the corridors. It's from what I spoke to the sergeant, we're talking about, I mean, let's,
the hall.
Sergeant Murray come in on that if he wants to.
Condition 3A.
That is the main areas, isn't it?
Yeah, just.
Yeah. The areas I've discussed, Chair, would be the main internal areas. It's the gallery, the bar, the main hall and the front door.
Okay.
Means private office.
All right.
I think we're looking at a minimum of 4 cameras.
I think that's.
Yes,
what it's
yeah.
like.
So that's what we're looking for.
Yes, yeah.
So on that basis, Chair, we would ask you to pose the conditions that we've agreed with the police, with trading standards, allow us time to do the noise. Obviously, they understand fully, having spoken to Mr. McConnell, they cannot breach the abatement notice. That would be there's an abatement notice, of course, you know, you've seen that in the, but to breach that would be a criminal offence anyway. So they do understand that noise levels. And until we get this sorted out with whoever, the holes in the ceiling and the lights at the, see, what do they call them? Uplift. What they call them? Skylights, sorry. You know what I mean. And until we get those insulated somewhere against noise, then they'll just have to turn the noise down.
Okay.
On that basis, thank you very much.
Right. Going back to this rent increase, I'd just like to have a quick conversation on that. So when you took over the premises in 2012.
Sorry, didn't quite hear you, madam.
When you took over the premises in 2012, have I got that date right?
When did
2016.
2016.
The association take it over?
That was 2012.
2012. And so from then you were paying the sum of, what did you say, 3,000? It was a peppercorn?
Annually.
Annually. So when did that actually go up to £45,000?
We've been in negotiations with the council over the last 9 years about the renewal of our lease, which hasn't as yet been done.
So there's been no renewal on the lease?
There's been no renewal on the lease, but there's been negotiations, and the negotiations are difficult because of the associated cost of the new lease, which is going to be in the order of £45,000. Probably are aware that the council is operating a social matrix, which can reduce that figure to £17,000, but even £17,000 from £3,000 is quite a stretch for Hibiscus. The important point is that Hibiscus at the moment is in particularly difficult financial circumstances, worsened by the recent events, I should add, which has meant that we've had to return our income from April and May. And if you now impose a suspension, then we will effectively be in a situation where we're not able to generate any income for a period of 6
So could we get back to the 45,000? So is this set in stone?
We have not signed that. That's what's being requested, but we have not signed any papers.
May I? Who requested?
This is coming from the council.
Right, okay. So at the moment, I mean, 17 would be a struggle, 45 is just like the wall. Okay, so how would you going forward fund this rental if that's what they're asking you to sign? And you can't sign it because you, I mean, how would you fund that?
Just to sign on the basis of what the council is asking, because it would mean that we have a liability which we know that we wouldn't be able to meet. And that's, in our view, not good business. In terms of what we had proposed to the council is that we wish to look at their social matrix to see where additional value for Hibiscus could be identified. To which Hibiscus is looking at the ability to be able to increase its income by enhancing the range of activities which it delivers. One of the main issues that one of the main obstacles to that is the ability for us to be able to go outside of our existing license hours. As you probably are aware, the late night economy is very much where possibility for generating income is for small organizations like ourselves. But our access to being able to run an economy, run an event beyond midnight is very far and few between.
Okay. I find it a little bit disturbing, sir, that you have had events. Now, I can't swear that all the representations that have come in are true or false, but there seem to be quite a lot. And you're saying that the range of activities has been stunted by the fact that you can't get a late night license for the late night economy. And we see things like this, and we see reports about noise and nuisance having to go out, and the police and the licensing team having to go. It doesn't give us much confidence in not allowing, but working out how we can help you or assist you going further if this is the type of behaviour that's happening in and around your facility.
Let me respond to that by first to the question, the financial question effectively.
Can you talk up a little bit more, Mr. Headley, please?
Okay.
Speak up.
Okay, you can't hear me.
Yes.
So fine. Hibiscus's finance at the moment is in a bad way because our principal activity has always been daycare for the elderly.
Yes.
At the moment, we only have one client from the council, which is way short of what we would expect to be able to break even to deliver the care service. Since the lockdown, we've only had one such referral. And we've not been able to compensate for that by bringing in other types of activity because we are concerned about the potential for creating nuisance in the area because those activities would necessarily involve a certain amount of music or whatever. So to avoid closure, what Hibiscus has been doing is been utilizing its space through its membership and through family events in order to generate some income. The question essentially was how would we afford the new rents being proposed by the council? The short answer is we can't. We are not going to be able to hit £45,000 going to the council with all the other expenses you have for service delivery. That's an impossibility for us. In those circumstances, what we've been saying is, well, hang on, let's try and negotiate this. Let's try and find something that is meaningful for both parties. At the moment, the council gained some, they can point to Hibiscus as a part of their diversity program, if you will, in as much as Hibiscus is a Black-run organization and its services are almost exclusively delivered to people of African heritage. Although there are other people who use the facility, the vast majority are of African heritage. We are merely in a position where we are at the mercy of the council in terms of whether it would look at the negotiations over the lease in a more less business, straight business, yeah, because I understand what the council is doing. It's just straight business for them. They need to generate income too. You know, and the whole community sector is being, if you like, being asked to pay a commercial rent. It isn't just Hibiscus is being asked to pay this kind of rent. My understanding it's across the piece.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the conditions and working with the team. You know, I'm quite impressed. They've come across quite nicely. And I think if we get it right, hopefully there should be no further instances like
Yes.
one. Can you just confirm how many people work in the daycare in the day centre during the day and how many on event nights?
We have at the moment in our daycare service one council referral, and we have 4 people who come in.
Volunteers?
No. 4 other elderly people who come to participate in that service.
Right.
And that's during the mornings, and in the afternoon, that number increases. We have some other people who come in to play dominoes and such like.
Right.
Beyond that.
Event nights?
Sorry?
Event nights, Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Yeah, we have one monthly event night. It's called Let's Come.
A month.
That's been running since 2016.
Okay.
And that's an event where the membership comes in, and we encourage them to bring a guest because the members attend free, but the guests pay £5. And we would apply for a 10 so that we can sell some alcohol in addition to some food to generate some income. And that's been a very important income generator for us.
Now, going back to the tens, this is not just event nights, this is also private parties.
No, madam. I was at pains to point out earlier that 99% of our events are members' events, or family events.
Right,
May I just add that this year, to date, all our events, this current calendar year,
Yes.
2023, we've had no private parties. Private events, the only private events we had last year was when we were hired by the government of Saint-Tro and Principe to hold their presidential elections, and when we rented out a space at Adler's Wells. We've not held any parties or
what about the King Charles III? What was that?
a hibiscus event for our members and families.
Right, and you were charging, were you charging for those tickets?
Opportunity to attend.
Wait, was you charging for those tickets?
No, I'm sorry. We had two events planned for the coronation. The first was a family fun day that took place between 12 and 5.
I'm talking about the one that started at.
Yes, and the other part of it was the King's Showcase, which was scheduled to be delivered between 8,
Right,
which we required at 10 to go beyond that, which was refused in the upset. We had a visit from the police earlier in the evening and folk felt, look, you know, the simple thing to do in this instance is let's just end it early. So the event ended, the 8 o'clock event ended around about 10 o'clock. They didn't go on to late.
right, okay. One last question from me. Right, so one of the conditions was for the hibiscus to have a DPS. Now, I can kind of understand, Graham, where you're coming from on that one, considering they haven't got a license to sell alcohol. But you do have a duty of care to the people that come into your premises. And on tens night, when people are drinking alcohol, which you do have a license for, who is the responsible person that oversees what's going on and how much alcohol and the condition of your clients, your guests?
The 21st of April, the board met primarily to determine the police's request for access to our CCTV footage. And the other decision it took on that occasion was the appointment of Mr. Kenneth Pompey as a DPS, as we have for a long time been saying, look, you know, we need to get such into hibiscus. And we were hoping to seek a variation to our license simultaneously with this review. But I believe your advice was don't muddy the waters and leave that alone.
Yes.
Yes.
Right, okay, thank you. Councillor McQuarrie, any questions?
Yeah, I just got one question for the applicant here. Looking at page 185 on your license. I will review it. Okay, 12th of January 2023. On that one, it says Hibiscus Community Centre, and on the application, it says Hibiscus Caribbean Elderly Association. Can you tell us when did the name change?
I'm sorry, madam, I didn't quite follow the question.
Councillor's asking is, you've got one name, I think, on the temporary event notice.
Yeah.
On,
Hibiscus Community Centre,
got community centre.
and then you got Hibiscus Caribbean Elderly Association.
Yes,
Have you changed the name?
no, we have not changed the name. It is Hibiscus Caribbean Elderly Association. That's the name of the charity, as distinct from Hibiscus Community Centre, which is the premises which HCEA manages. I don't know whether that particular application has somehow transposed those two titles. If that would have been an error.
That's fine, thank you.
Councillor Horn?
Don't have a question, but I do appreciate the explanation of the charity which is run. You're not the only charity as such in the borough which is having that, because other centres such as yours, where the rate is increasing, they're having difficulties as well, trying to raise the rent for these properties to get these introduced. I don't know about. So thank you very much for that. I'm quite sure that we're much more aware of the struggle that you have to go through to fund these premises. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just very quickly, sorry, Ms Headley, I forgot while I was asking you questions earlier. You, on your last conditions that were added to your licence, you were asked about a noise limiter and soundproofing to the premises. You then were having correspondence between Ian and yourself about when can they come help you set it up or do what they have to do to it. And you agreed that this is something that you would have got done. What happened?
There was some, if I might suggest, mitigation. I did in fact raise it with Mr. McConnell in the extent that we were minded to try and enhance the soundproofing of the building in advance of installing the limit. And we had an agreement with the provider to do that. And I explained that to Mr. McConnell that we were seeking to get some of that work done. But that unfortunately fell through and we weren't able to get that. So what we did is we went ahead and we actually acquired a limiter and it was due to be fitted, I believe, last week sometime. You were due to come. Last Monday, you were due to come, but the technician wasn't able to make that arrangement. And so I've since written advising the awaiting an appointment from the technician effectively. The device is there, just needs to be installed. Yes.
So you've got the limiter.
Yeah, yeah. I've got.
You actually have that.
Limiter is on the premises now, yeah.
And so how long do you think this technician's going to come before?
I think my last correspondence to Ian was, have you got a date sometime next week? And the last conversation was, can't do Friday, but can do other days.
So does that mean you could get it? I think what the chair wants to know is, could you get it installed next week?
Well, that's my intention.
Yes, so.
That's my clear intention, yes.
Right, okay. I have no further questions. Okay, have you any questions for?
So I think in relation to the works that you said will get done over the next couple of months, is that the skylights and the vents? Be absolutely clear what's going to be done.
Well, that's still problematic. And I think we will need to have a much closer look at that. The reason being it's the skylights are the only natural lights that come into the building. And in terms of how we then baffle those, necessarily have to be transparent for it to be able to continue to meet that purpose, which means that we would probably be having to engage in purchasing acoustic glass as opposed to using mastic to block up holes and stuff. So I need more technical advice on that one, to be perfectly blunt about it.
And on the CCTV, at the appeal, you made a case for your customers wanting to use the outside areas until 10 o'clock. So are you going to have CCTV cameras in those two outside spaces?
Oh. At the moment, we have the opportunity to use the outside until 10 o'clock, because you may recall the court had imposed the restriction that after 10 we need to be indoors. What we found was it would be simply to keep people inside. And that's essentially what we have been doing. I think when you came to visit on the Friday evening of the 22nd or whenever it was, you in fact witnessed that was indeed how we were operating. We were not encouraging people to go outside. We keep them in the building, keep the chatter in there. And if you want to smoke, you go around to Edmonton. No, you can't do it in the building.
So are you proposing to revise that condition so the outside areas would not be used?
I'm not proposing that we might do that at this juncture, only on the basis that it exists for us to be able to do that, but we choose not to implement that because we feel it's better for Hibiscus if there was no noise, particularly on the left of the building that is closer to the residential with the flats. There's a block of flats. I mean, Hibiscus has some garages on one side and it's got a block of flats. We were concerned about disturbing neighbours on the left-hand side. Let's close the area off. That's a simple thing to do. If you want to have it written onto this as a condition, it's our existing practice. I don't think my colleagues would object, but I generally don't wish to.
I mean, I'm concerned and I'll ask your opinion on this, when it gets hot, particularly hot, and you want to use the premises late at night, are people going to go out there?
Well, at the moment, it works as it's winter time.
But will it, I think what.
I understand exactly where he's coming from in the summer.
Mr. Headley, on the night of that incident, it was clearly seen on CCTV that the side was being used by many people in the middle of the night, and it was cold. It was winter, and it was still being used after 10 p.m.
Is there a condition on the existing licence for a time for outside space usage? What is it?
2200.
22.
All, the precise condition is all outside areas must be closed and cleared of customers by 22 hours.
Right. Okay, can we move on? Any other questions in? Okay, please.
I have one further question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Just to clarify, you mentioned that the venue had not been used for any private parties in 2023, if I understood correctly. I just wanted to clarify, our understanding was that the event that happened on the 18th of March was a private party, may have been by family members, but that the venue was hired to these people to host a party. Could you clarify the position on that?
Yes, that was a family event. What I determined to be, what I understand a private party to be, would be an event which has, in the first instance, a fee attached on the door. You pay to come in. You're selling alcohol, you're selling food, and you're also advertising your wares on social media and such like. Those are private commercial events that are raising money. People who are organizing family events, birthdays, funerals, and things of that ilk, we call those family events.
And just to clarify, for family events, there is, the venue is hired to the family, as in the family are paying you a fee to host them.
Yeah, the family will pay Hibiscus the fee for the space, but the family is not using the space for the purpose of commerce. They're not looking to generate an income for that purpose.
Sorry.
As Mr. Headley, what due diligence do you do as an organisation to ensure that the premises isn't being sublet? So let's say, for example, I say I want to hire the premises for my daughter, for example, for her 18th birthday party, but it actually transpires that I'm a music promoter and I am selling it on social media or whatever. Do you do any due diligence in relation to making sure that those people who are booking are actual bona fide people? Are they committee members, families? Are they, you know, could anybody from the local community actually hire the premises? Because we do get sometimes, unfortunately, where somebody will say that they're having a birthday party, but it will be a promoted event which will be sold on social media and things. What due diligence do you do at the moment?
I understand. I mean, in this instance, most of our events are events which are either inspired by Hibiscus ourselves, meaning the management, and which I'm involved, or they're coming in via a member. Yeah. So in terms of diligence, what we would ask, if a member comes to us, but if a member comes and says they've got another member of their family who's not a member of Hibiscus, we will also say that's fine because, you know, you're family with us. But if it's a case of somebody's approached one of our members and say, look, we understand there's a space and they would like to use it, we would ask for a reference. That's best we would do. We won't go beyond that. And we are not, as I said, you know, we're not an organization that's hiring out to commercial ventures. So the necessity for us to be doing that kind of diligence really doesn't arise, because invariably it's word of mouth of people you know who knows who.
Okay, anyone?
Can I, Mr. Headley, I just want to clarify that when you said that you didn't hand over the CCTV footage because the request was made by telephone, I also did attend. I was at your premises and I asked for it and you told me no.
Yes.
It wasn't just a phone call. I was actually in person on the premises when I requested it to and was told.
You were on the premises as a result of my invitation for you to come and collect them.
Just wanted to point out that I did actually make the.
That's quite different. My understanding is from you arriving because you're in hot pursuit of some investigation, something's taken place.
No. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think we have one more thing. According to your lease, on the lease for the Hibiscus Centre, what are your actual responsibilities pertaining to the building itself?
Well, we are operating on the 2009 lease at the moment, as opposed to the revised draft document, which we've got, which gives the council the responsibility for the outer areas and Hibiscus the responsibility for the internal areas. In addition to which, we do get some minimal services to attend to fixtures and fittings that might go wrong. Like something go wrong with one of the boilers in the toilet, we get the council, they would very happily come and sort that out. But come and collect our bin, we've got to pay a commercial rate for that.
Right, okay, thank you. Right, if there are, right, so it's for you, no adding of any extra information that we already got. Close up, considering we brought the review to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We'd just like to make 3 main points in response to what has been said by a few points regarding in response to their submissions on a suspension, the appropriate. So the first point we wish to respond to is the point that Hibiscus is currently struggling financially, and we have considerable sympathy with financial struggles, particularly in this time of cost of living crisis and energy bills going up. However, in the experience of the police, it is precisely the venues which are struggling financially where there are the most problems in terms of compliance. And the focus of the licensing objectives and of the police is on protecting the public, protecting children from harm, protecting any member of the public from crime and disorder. And it's our position that these objectives apply equally to any premises, whether it's doing well, whether it's doing badly, and it's the same harms it's the same harm from the perspective of the member of the public. Therefore, while we have considerable sympathy with this position, this does not change the police's position as to the necessity for the conditions that have been imposed. The second point we wish to respond to is comments that were made by Mr. Hopkins in relation to the inability of the premises to stop crime happening on the street. Now, it was clear from the evidence that we saw in terms of the CCTV evidence and what's been presented in the statement of PC Bench that from approximately 9:45 on the evening of the 18th, that there were masked teenagers which began congregating around the venue, and that the security guards started looking concerned at this point in time. And from any reasonable observer, there was likely to be trouble in this area. Indeed, Mr. Hopkins made the comment that there was clearly some sort of gang involvement in the basis that these teenagers were turning up in masks and with hoods. So at this point, before 10 o'clock, you could see that there was going to be trouble. However, no contact was made with the police at this time in terms of informing the police that there's likely to be trouble and asking for assistance, and limited or no efforts were made to disperse this gathering crowds. It's therefore, there is clearly a link, and Hibiscus accept that there is a link. This is not just an event that is approximately 70 yards away. Second point to make on that is that we see that there is a 15-year-old child who was brutally assaulted as he left the premises in what it seems to be accepted to be a targeted attack, involving, to some extent, many guests of the premises. So again, this is not talking about the premises having responsibility for random events 70 yards down the street. The attack continued down the street, but the hub, the focus, and the target was a guest of the premises. And finally, the CCTV footage also shows, as we said, clear risks to the children who are in the premises, and this inability to lack of, say, training of these people who were guarding the door at certain times. So in terms of this idea that the premises, there is nothing that the premises can do, or potentially what the premises can do from the police's perspective, as we set out in the witness statement and in our initial presentation, there is quite a lot that the premises could do to ameliorate these issues. such as the security guards, increased CCTV, and this continued engagement with the police when there seems to be some sort of problem happening, for the police to be confident that someone will call the police and say, we are very concerned about the situation that's developing here. And as was brought up as well, there is already an existing condition asking the outside areas to be closed by 10 p.m. And what we see in the CCTV footage is that this was not done. So the police will think that the premises could do more in terms of complying with the existing conditions, in addition to this continuing engagement. And on the topic of engagement, this is the third issue we'd like to respond to, is Mr. Hopkins made the point how Mr. Headley's involvement in, or talked about Mr. Headley's involvement with the HCA and the good work that he does. And again, as set out previously, the police recognise the good work that Mr. Headley has done. However, there is a severe concern about the engagement that Mr. Headley had with the police following the incident. And when we read papers that were provided, we would invite the council to pay particular focus to pages 1 and 2 of PC Bench's witness statement and the letter that was sent by PC Bench to Mr. Headley on the 4th of April 2023. And in that, what can be seen is an unwillingness on the part of Mr. Headley to accept responsibility for the promotion of the licensing objectives. And there are 3 examples of that. And the first being the initial refusal to hand over the CCTV. This was despite being informed by police officers that a crime or a potential crime clearly overrides the GDPR. And I know that we've had some discussion on that. And just to clarify, from a legal perspective, the idea of the GDPR is that you can't hold personal data without a good reason. And investigating a crime is quintessentially a good reason and is clearly exempted from this and is seen as overriding any concerns that these are personal data. The police can justifiably process this data and needs to in order to play its function. And it's not just the fact that this was required, but Mr. Headley and Hibiscus were informed that this was the correct position to take on the law. And yet there was a refusal to hand over the CCTV. This CCTV was handed over, but only on the 25th of April. So this is over a month since the incident took place. And that was after a review had been submitted. The police accept that there was no legal obligation to hand over the CCTV footage, in that the police did not exercise its right that it could have done under PACE to demand this to be handed over. There was no CCTV condition in place. However, the licensing holder has an obligation to uphold the licensing objectives, and we would expect, given the severity of the incident taking place, given the fact that the 15-year-old child who was a guest of that premises was assaulted, that the license holder would have been willing, ready, and indeed encouraged to hand over this CCTV when requested by the police. And it is for this reason that the police are concerned about this lack of engagement. The second example of this unwillingness of Mr. Headley to accept the responsibility, again, that can be found in the evidence before the committee, is his remarks in the meeting that people who had hired the venue were responsible for their own safety, and that the premises had no responsibility once the persons had left the main door of the centre and were on the street. So there's clear indications from the license holder that they don't see that they have a role in stopping this sort of events happening again. And similarly, there are remarks that all teenagers carry knives and that such incidents happen on a busy road. And this is even though Buckingham Road is a residential street in a low traffic network. And it's from this perspective, and these are the clear reasons why the police want to engage with someone else at the centre and feel that this is necessary, because there is a lack of acceptance of responsibility and lack of acceptance of the license holder's role in promoting these objectives. And the second point, in addition to failing to accept responsibility, that calls concern, and again is why we are here today, is a failure on the part of Mr. Headley to take the discussions with the council and the police seriously. And the evidence we'd like to draw the council's attention to is the fact that during the meeting, the informal conversation that Mr. Headley was invited to with the council, Mr. Headley took a call 20 minutes into this meeting and took a call during it and left after 20 minutes. And Mr. Headley has said that at this time he had informed the police that he had to be back for daycare at 10 o'clock. Now, the police's understanding was that Mr. Headley did have other commitments, but Mr. Headley had proposed the time in the morning. He'd suggested 8:30. This was by agreement moved to 9 o'clock in the morning, but there was no mention that Mr. Headley would only be available for half an hour or 20 minutes. And moreover, the police officers did not arrive late to this meeting. They arrived on time at 9 o'clock and were not informed at 9 o'clock again that Mr. Headley had to leave, and no explanation was given at this time. At this meeting, in addition, when the police and the council.
Sorry, I don't know if that can stretch. Could you? Yeah? Any further? Thank you. Sorry, we're really struggling.
The second point I wish to make was when asked during that meeting what measures Mr. Headley thought that the HCA could put in place, he replied, "You email me." From the police's perspective, this did not show the type of engagement the police would be expecting, particularly following the incident. And finally, Mr. Headley did not follow up with the police afterwards concerning a suggested modification of the license to include condition. So in our perspective, it is precisely this lack of engagement that has caused this concern. The final point that the police wish to address are the submissions in relation to suspension. In the circumstances, given the evidence of breaches of the existing condition, the problems that are of the existing license, such as that outside areas were not closed by 10 o'clock, the evidence of risks to children in the venue and risks to public crime and safety. The police feel that on the evidence there is justification here for seeking a revocation. However, the police are trying to take this role in terms of they've sat down and thought very carefully about what we could do to keep the premises going and have that same community benefits while at the same time balancing that with public safety. And so from the police's position, these conditions are the bare minimum that can occur for the police to be satisfied that this premises will continue to be safe. And for that reason, it is incredibly important that these are put in place before the premises operates again, and therefore we seek a suspension or at least a condition that the premises cannot operate until every single one of these conditions is satisfied of the ones that have been proposed. And in particular, as we said, the dispersal policy. And again, we have sympathy for the financial situation, but from the police's perspective and from a licensing perspective, it is the licensing objectives that must be satisfied, and these apply to all premises. Unless there's anything further that concludes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Okay, right, we are going to adjourn. We're going into deliberations. And as soon as we've made our decision, we'll call you back and give you quite sure how long. Any thoughts?
I thought that need at least half an hour, wouldn't you? It's not going to be.
We're not going to be long.
Finished before 2 o'clock, are we?
So don't go too far. Keep your phone on, Graham. You, when we've made our decision, as I said, we'll get the clerk to come out and call you back in.
Thank you.
Right? Thanks very much. You take all your laptops
that he requested. The agreed police and premises licence conditions will be added to the premises licence with some minor changes. So condition 3A, it will read, the system shall be maintained in good working order and fully operational, covering all internal and external areas of the premises to which the public have access, and also the area immediately outside of the premises. And then a final change in 3A, all entry and exit points should be covered, enabling frontal identification, full head and shoulder images of every person entering the premises, with sufficient lighting to allow for this in any light condition to an evidential standard. The licensing subcommittee have then changed some phraseology in condition 7, in consultation with CEH, and it's also added the licensing officer as well as the noise nuisance team and the police licensing officer. There are then 3 further conditions which the licensing subcommittee have added to the premises license, and I'll just read those out all. The first one of those, which will be condition 8, the premises license holder shall ensure that a documented search policy is implemented at the premises. Any searches shall only be conducted by same sex. Staff training is to be given in the correct procedures, and records are to be kept in a bound book. All documentation should be produced to an authorised officer of the licensing authority or the police request. Condition 9. Drugs and weapons seized will be placed in a locked receptacle set aside for this purpose. The means for securing or unlocking the receptacle will be retained by the premises licence holder or the designated person, or in the absence any other responsible person. A record shall be made of the seizure, the time, the date, and by whom and to whom the items were handed, into a bound book specifically kept for that purpose. Such a book to be produced to an authorised officer of the licensing authority or police on request. The premises licence holder shall make suitable arrangements with the police for collection of any seized items. And then the final additional condition, number 10, handheld metal detecting scanners shall be in use at the premises during organised events and whenever risk assessed as necessary. Detectors shall be operated by door supervisors or by a suitably trained member of staff when no door supervisor is on duty. The full reasons for that decision will be circulated within the next 5 days.
This meeting is now closed. Thank you very much. And within 21 days.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Well, the notice of decision will also contain the appeal rights. So within 21 days from receipt of the notice of appeal.
Thank you. Thank you.